Hey, welcome to the Book of Dad Radio Show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson. As always, before we get started, we want to say thank you to Jehovah. Thank Him for His Son, Jesus Christ. Thank Him for our families. Thank Him for work and our ability to do the things we're able to do. Book of Dad Radio Show, and my main man, Eddy G, is hanging out as usual. What's up, Eddy?
Hey. How you doing, sir? Good day today, man.
It's a great day. You sound like Fat Albert, man. What's up with that?
That's all that Thanksgiving turkey.
Yeah, you trying to shake it off?
Yeah.
Hey, man, we got a really good show. We got a really good show ahead today. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We're all about education and making sure people are informed and in line with all of the social issues that are going on right now. But I'm going to revert back to a term I used to use often, and it's called representative bureaucracy. And what that means is that people are actually being represented by people who are like them. That's kind of typical of late in politics because of the rezoning and things like that. But where there appears to be a disparity at even to today, Eddy G, is in policing. You know, there's a lot of situations where people are being policed by folks who really don't look like them or know who they are. So we got a remedy of sorts that are in the making and in the works for people who are doing it, like our great guest that we have today. And without any further ado, we're going to bring our guest in, Sheriff or Police Chief Gary Hall from Lincoln University in Missouri, at HBCU. He has this great initiative that he started that's going to try and combat some of the issues that we just talked about. Greetings, Gary, and how are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you for having me on your show, sir.
Absolutely. We are very, very honored to have you come in. This is a great initiative that you have. And what it essentially is you have, from A to Z, created this curriculum academy, as it were, for policing at HBCUs, or in particular Missouri, University of Lincoln in Missouri. Talk to us about what you have going on and where you are in the process and what we can look forward to as far as spreading this initiative out, if you will.
Yes, sir. So I came back to Lincoln University in 2016. Lincoln University is my alma mater. I graduated there with my undergrad. I was with the sheriff's office for almost 20 years prior to that. So the opportunity to be able to come back to my HBCU and be their police chief, that meant the world to me. So when I got back, I decided that, it would probably be a good idea, since we had a great criminal justice program there, to try to get a police academy started. So I started kicking around the idea of getting a police academy started, not just for my agency, but for the surrounding agencies statewide, to create a diversity pool for some of the police departments. Down south, you'll see a lot of African Americans in the police force, not as many as we'd like to see, but a whole lot more than once you get past up here by the Mason-Dixon line, and trying to find some diversity in our law enforcement agencies up here. It's pretty hard to find. So I thought, what better way to add to the diversity pool than establish a police academy on a campus of an HBCU? What we come to find out is a lot of people like being around people that look like them, and they feel like they stand a better chance when it comes to going into the police academy. When I went to the police academy back in 1997, I was one of two African Americans in that police academy class of 26 people. And you will see that a lot around the state here in Missouri, and in some of the surrounding states as well, to where we're looking at the police academy and you're looking for diversity. Not just African Americans, but females in general too. They're hard to come by. And so you had a great point when you started talking about we have to get to the point to where our agencies, especially governmental agencies, taxpayer agencies, look like the communities they serve. Yes. That's how we build that legitimacy, where people can feel like we understand what's going on in the communities. And so until we get there, we're probably going to continue to have some of the issues that we're seeing in our nation today. So I'm hoping this is a great start for us, and I'm hoping to be the flagship for other HBCUs with criminal justice programs around the nation.
Well, that's a great idea. I think we need to diversify a lot more. And as you said, on a college campus, you have young men and women who are making some career decisions. And it's almost like when you have the military, the reserve, and signing up for the military in high school, because they're exposed to it, the opportunity is there. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. We do too. We receive a lot of support for the program. Pretty much anything I've asked from any other organization around, whether it be the Missouri State Highway Patrol, our main police department here, Sheriff's Department, all the way up to the Department of Public Safety here in Missouri, and the governor's office, I've received nothing but support. So I think now is the time, everything going on, that we press hard right now for police reform and trying to get and diversify our agencies.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that, because you mentioned all the support you were getting. My question would have been, or still is, have you been running into any obstacles as far as meeting these goals?
No, not at all. Actually, the program is moving a lot faster than I expected it to. We're hoping to open up our doors January 19th. We haven't even started advertising yet for the academy. The only advertisement we've had is through the news media. I've done a couple other shows like this, talked to people word of mouth, and we have approximately 24 people that have already signed up. My goal was 10 to 8 to 10. Mm-hmm. So we've already exceeded those goals as far as making sure that we had enough to ensure that we had a good academy class go through. And out of that 14 I have 4 African-American females, which is unheard of in the police academy here in the state of Missouri.
And let's talk a little bit about logistics as far as bringing this thing on. I mean, it's going to take some planning on levels that haven't existed before. You talked about the Department of Public Safety and them being the approving authority for accreditation as far as this is concerned. But every university is kind of strapped for land and all kind of other resources. What are you going to be doing, or how are you planning, and what's your steps, if you will, for bringing this project, as it were, online before you get your first classes started?
So the good thing about this is I've had the training before. So prior to this academy, I was site coordinator at the Missouri Sheriff's Association. So I ran their part-time police academy out there. So I kind of had the framework to be able to do this at Lincoln University. So what I required from Lincoln University was a place to hold our classroom work, a place to do our practical exercises, a place to do our defensive tactics and PT. We have all of that. We're a university. So the university set aside a classroom for us, some space for us to be able to do all these things. I made contact with the Missouri State Highway Patrol and asked them if we can use their emergency driving range, which is, they call it EVOC, which is Emergency Vehicle Operations Course. They're state funded. They have it. It's there. All we had to do was ask, and the colonel of the Missouri State Highway Patrol was more than happy to let us use that facility. Made contact with the Missouri Department of Defense and asked them if we can use their firing range so that we can qualify our officers, sign an MOU with them, and we were able to use that range as well. So everything kind of all came together really easy because it's something that I had done before and worked with those other entities. It was just a matter of putting MOUs together and asking, and everyone was on board.
So when you say MOUs, you're talking about memos of understanding, right? And then here's the question. Here's a question I have, is that within the fact that you're going to be teaching, life goes on and you still have to do the policing and oversight, as it were. Talk about some challenges you anticipate with possibly having to continue policing and to teach at the same time.
Well, some of the challenges that we're anticipating is we don't know what's going to happen between now and during the course of our course of instruction. We could have another George Floyd incident. We could have we could start having more protests and even violent protests, depending on what happens between now and January 19th. Also, COVID-19 plays a big part in that because we may not be able to do NC depending on the regulations that are getting imposed on us here in the state of Missouri and Jefferson City in general. So some of the challenges is we're looking at being able to go virtual, being able to go online by issuing each cadet a laptop, ensuring that they have internet connection so that we can do the coursework virtual. We're allowed to do that by the standards for public safety. All the practical exercises we may have to put on hold. That right there is going to be a big issue for us if indeed we do have to go virtual.
I see. Outstanding point. I'm sorry. Hey, listen, we're at a point where we can take a quick break. A couple things I want to think about, and I want you to think about when we come back is as you said before, being able to supplement for where you cannot do those practical and hands-on plenary type of situations where you need people cheeks and seats, so to speak, for lack of a better term. But I think this is a great initiative, and I think we're going to have a great further discussion about this. This is the Book of Dad radio show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson with Chief of Police Gary Hall from Lincoln University in Missouri, and my main man, Eddy G. Gary who?
Sorry, Hill. Hill, H-I-L-L.
Gary Hill, I'm sorry. Hey.
That's all right.
I'm not a police officer, you are, man. It's the Book of Dad radio show. We'll be right back.
You have something special. You have greatness in you. Hello, I'm Les Brown, Mrs. Mamie Brown's baby boy. I want you to spread the word to your family members and friends to listen to LesBrownGreatnessRadio.com. Absolutely. And let me share with you why we're going to be focusing on positive things, because whatever you focus on the longest becomes the strongest. And now more than ever, when the suicide rate has increased over 33%, when the suicide rate of young children between 5 and 11 has doubled, people feeling hopeless and stressed out and powerless. We need programming that can bring out the greatness in them. And that's what we will be focused on. When you listen, it will be an experience that will transform your life. LesBrownGreatnessRadio.com. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hey, welcome back to the Book of Dad radio show with Dr. Robert Benson and Eddy G. Today we have our special guest, Gary Hill, who is really giving us some great information about some things he's doing with the police. And I have a quick question for you, Gary.
Yes, sir.
When you established this academy, is there going to be a particular curriculum that you're going to follow? Will there be any adjustments made for some of the issues that people are kind of raising right now? Will it be a contemporary format, or what type of things do you plan on doing?
That's a great question. So in order to have a police academy in the state of Missouri, you have to teach the curriculum that the Missouri Department of Public Safety approves. And so within that curriculum, as long as you teach that curriculum, you're good to go. But you can add to it, you just can't take away from it. So what we plan on adding into our curriculum, one, we want to add in the policing in America and policing the minority communities. We really want to get that in there because you don't get to understand how we got to this point in the police academy because of introduction to law enforcement unless you go into college and you take that course. We don't do that in our police academies here in the state of Missouri. So we want to start out at the beginning to ensure that our cadets and everyone understands how the police department and our minority communities and lower socioeconomic communities got to this point to where our relationship is strained. So we want to make sure that we hit that home. So even when I was at the Missouri Sheriff's Academy, one of the questions that I'd asked to every cadet class that came through over about 8 years, the first question I'd ask is, raise your hand if you know what Jim Crow laws were. No one raised their hand. I said, raise your hand if you know who enforced Jim Crow laws. No one raised their hand. I ask another question, which is very important, and that is, raise your hand if you've ever been in a fight before. Very few people raise their hand. And the reason why I ask those questions is because then it gives you a level of understanding of who you got sitting in that seat. And then you see some of these issues that happen out in the communities that we're supposed to be serving, where we have police officers that are scared. We have police officers who are out there policing communities that, again, have never been in a fight before, probably never been in any kind of to the point to where it may be life or death or someone just getting beat up. And so we're throwing them into these situations and they're scared. So they don't understand why, our minority communities have the strain with the law enforcement agencies because they don't know our history. So one of the things we want to make sure that we add to our curriculum, we're going to call those days Enlightenment Days, where we go over the history of law enforcement and and policing minority communities. Another thing that we're going to add is we're going to add a whole lot more practical hours. And what I mean by that is, so when we're working with our domestics, our disturbance, our civil disturbances, practicals are our hands-on piece. And the more hands-on training that we can give these officers, these recruits before they leave the academy, the better they're going to be, the more understanding they're going to have. And we're not going to use police officers. We're going to use community members to come help us do our practical exercise, because I want it to be as realistic so that everyone has an understanding of what's going on. And I want the people that I'm going to use are going to be real diverse and get as much diversity helping us out in these practical exercises as possible. We have to have that because, again, some of these police departments or policing communities that, they'll never come in contact with any brown people in any way, shape, or form. This is the middle of Missouri. So I want to make sure that I get all of that into our practical exercises and training.
That's a very good point, a great question. But my question now becomes education and mental capacity are a big issue when it comes down to policing. You want students that are of this university to be in this class. Are you going to allow folks to be in this training that aren't actually students of the university?
Yes, so we have the program is twofold. We have the student side of it, and then we have the working side of it. So we have those adults that would like to be in the academy. So we're not a full-time academy. We're starting off our academy as a part-time, nighttime academy. So we're going to go from 5 o'clock in the evening to 10 o'clock at night, Monday through Thursday, and then 8 to 5 on Saturday. So for those that want to, those adults that aren't in school, that want to change their field, this is them to get into law enforcement.
I find that interesting, though, because I mean, and I don't want to be antagonistic about this in any way, but I see a potential discord with that, in that we're trying to reach a specific population. And I mean, and we can't be prejudiced or do things where we are succumbing to that. But we're boxing ourselves in. Only certain people can come to this course. But I really was under the impression that this course was specifically directed towards increasing and gaining interest in policing from students that are typically attend HBCUs, because I would think that at some point, instead of just teaching there at the University of Missouri, the HBCU community in general would follow suit and try to teach these courses there as well.
Yeah, and I understand where you're coming from on that. And so when I looked at that, I kind of had the same thought process as well. But once we started seeing the interest in it, we started having people who at one point in time went to Lincoln University, who no longer, all minorities, now want to go to the academy, want to get back into finishing their degree at Lincoln University. So this was twofold for us. One, we can facilitate the need for our students, and we can also facilitate the needs of people who stopped going to college and now want to get back into college, and still, kind of cater to our minority community and adding that diversity into law enforcement. So it's worked for us both ways, actually.
Well, you know what? I think that the other benefit is by having a more contemporary training program and the addition of the different components. It'll benefit those who would have just gone to the normal police academy and gotten training, but wouldn't have gotten that diversity training, that extra boost. So I think that's a good part as well.
Yeah. And we still want to, again, just like you said, cater to a particular area, our Lincoln University community, because again, we have to have that, and I won't go away from that. And that will always be our stand to ensure that we increase diversity in the law enforcement, and we're going to be able to do that by being in such close contact with our minority students on Lincoln University's campus. That will always be our goal, to continue to increase those numbers.
Yeah, it's a great point because there's always that point to where you want to make sure you're not creating a double standard on any level, because
Yes.
everyone has to follow a law. It's that simple. But if you start creating programs that allow people entry for various reasons, then people will always figure out how to get into a program that was designed for someone else. I mean, I've seen it, and I've worked in different programs for different like that were designed for people who are of low income or minorities, or to increase the diversity of a particular program. And at some point, you always run into what I like to refer to as an anticlimactic effect, in that, yeah, you've reached your peak for this particular demographic, but then at some point you have to allow for others to come in to which that program wasn't intended for. But I think this is a great initiative. I don't know that we can minimize it in any way. I really believe that this is something that is long overdue, and that I'm looking forward to seeing how it is projected. But what a question I want to ask before we take a break, and I want you to think about this, if you would, please, is that you mentioned that the Georgia Department of, it's not the Georgia, but the Missouri Department of Public Health has to sanction any type of academy training, and also that the University of Missouri is governed by the HLC, which is a higher learning commission there. Is there an issue of any sort where the two of them don't particularly agree on what's being taught in this curriculum?
Okay. And this is why. So we've set it aside in two different ways. So through Lincoln University, if you go to the police academy, you're going to get 15 college credit hours. And these are going to be criminal justice that you're going to be able to get. And so we've taken care of the HLC side of it to make sure that we're compliant with the Higher Learning Commission. Now, the Missouri Department of Public Safety, they came through and did a site assessment. And when they do their site assessment, what they're looking at is our curriculum. And they have to sign off on the curriculum that we're teaching for the Department of Public Safety side of it. So those two sides, once we had approval for both those sides, that allow us to be able to continue on to get the main approval from the Missouri Department of Public Safety. And then it gave HLC the approval for college students to be able to use their financial aid to go through the academy.
Outstanding. Okay, well, this is Book of Dad Radio Show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson with Gary Hill and my main man, Eddy G. Great stuff here, and we'll be right back.
See why listeners from over 150 countries around the world follow the Book of Dad Radio Show. Join Dr. Robert Benson and Eddy G as they chat with special guests who share their stories and information that will change your life. Watch and listen on lifeandspiritonline.com or subscribe to the Book of Dad Radio Show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcast. Brought to you by the NASCA Network.
Hey, and we're right back. This is Dr. Robert Benson with my main man, Eddy G. Yes, Life and Spirit Online, only on the NASCA Network, the Book of Dad Radio Show that you can get anywhere where you download your podcasts. And we're doing a new format here. Great stuff, led out by Eddy G, of course. But when we left off, we were talking to Officer Gary Hill, who is the Chief of Police at Lincoln University in Missouri, HBCU. But we were talking about the slinkying or the balancing act, if you will, between two educational entities that are approving this curriculum that he put together. One of them is the Higher Learning Commission, and the other one is the Missouri Department of Public Safety. Gary, when you left off, we were going to talk about exactly what a student will have when they get done. Are they going to have a minor in policing when they graduate, or what's going to happen with them after they finish this course of yours?
Yes, sir. So the students who actually go through the program, who are actually enrolled in Lincoln University in the criminal justice program, they can only enroll into the academy once they're getting ready to cross their senior year. So what we're trying to do here is ensure that once they graduate from the police academy, they'll get their bachelor's degree in Lincoln University, and they'll get a certificate of criminal justice education from Lincoln University. But they will also get a peace officer's license, which is the same as your nursing license, your cosmetology license, to be able to perform law enforcement work in the state. So they'll get those three things. Those who are the working adults and those who are not enrolled in Lincoln University, they they will just get their peace officer's license and they'll get a certificate of education from Lincoln University, the 15 college credit hours.
That was great. So let me ask you this one question before I ask you another question. Is there an age limit to which a person can apply to be a police officer, period? I know some places, I think it's 18, others is 21. What's the age there?
So to apply, you have to be at least 19. You cannot take the post test, which is the state examination to get your peace officer's license until you're 21. So we may have someone that's not going to be 21 at the point of graduation. So they will have to wait until they turn 21 to take the post license. So you have to be 21 to receive your peace officer's license here in the state of Missouri.
Now, one other question about that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If you have a political science degree you're working on, will you receive credits towards that degree from this program?
No, sir. So if you're not in the criminal justice program, you'll receive just those criminal justice credit hours, the 15 that we have set aside that we've included with the program.
Gotcha.
That's a good question. The other thing I was going to ask you is that while there's a minimal age, is there a maximum age to which people are going to be allowed to participate in the program?
There isn't a maximum age. Basically, we require you to have a physical fitness, a physical from your doctor saying that you are physically fit enough to be able to attend the academy. So that's how we got rid of the age requirement, because I know a lot of law enforcement agencies as well have been doing that and upping the age limit on allowing people to go to the academy. If they are physically fit enough, and I've had people all the way up to 48, 49, 50 years old come through the academy at the Sheriff's Academy because they just exited out of the military or what have you and done just fine.
Well, Dr. Benson was asking that question because
Go ahead.
he's an old guy with fantasies of being a police officer, and his days are gone. Because you need to do at least 10 push-ups, I'm sure.
Well, I can do 5, man. Come on.
Well, you can be a crossing guard then.
You'll take me back to my high school days. But Gary, let me ask one other question before I turn it over to Easy Ed over there. Now, there's this argument of sorts out there about funding police. Me personally, I think a way that we can do away with a lot of the atrocities that we see in police encounters is to do away with police encounters altogether. I think that can still work if we increase our infrastructure and our way of surveillance of crime and things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, that's a great question. I get to ask that question a lot. So the express on this issue or to express Gary Hill, not necessarily the express views of Lincoln University or the Missouri Department of Public Safety. Let me go ahead.
Great disclosure.
So I'm a big proponent in law enforcement officers having to have liability insurance, just like doctors. A lot of times, unfortunately, people don't understand things until they get hit in the pockets. And so, you start doing a lot of stupid things while you're on duty and go law enforcement agency to law enforcement agency, and your insurance rates keep going up, just like you keep having accidents. Now you don't even want to drive your car because you're paying so much for insurance. Well, I weed out some of these people that have no business being in law enforcement because they got into it for the wrong reasons. So I'm a big proponent of law enforcement officers, starting out with that clean slate, just like with your insurance for your vehicles, where you got a great rate and everything else. Once you start getting those dated complaints, those validated investigations by your agencies and the Department of Public Safety that accreditates those agencies in that state, your credit rating starts to go down. And so it'll be a lot harder for officers like that to get hired. So I'm a big proponent of that.
Man, that is outstanding. Wow, I have never heard anyone say anything like that before. I think that is a great point and something that needs to be further investigated and perhaps implemented. Wow.
Absolutely. I know they have been kicking that around a lot. I know we hear the defunding issue a lot, and I think a lot of times people are right because they see schools get defunded, other city programs get defunded, but they kind of never really touch public safety. So we have to be real careful with that in some of the cities that the crime rates are really high, in the sense of, what are we doing? How are we going to stop that? Because really, we wouldn't need police if we would just police ourselves. If we would take care of ourselves and when things happen, be able to sit down things and be righteous by each other. But unfortunately, there are some people out there that just want to see the world burn. And I believe that's where we're supposed to come in. That's where we're supposed to come in, not just on the everyday harassing people. As I tell my officers, we don't go out and harass people. I don't even allow my officers to even argue with people going to jail, or we're not doing some sort of investigation or anything like that. If an argument starts, get in your car, drive away. There's no reason for that. Those situations always turn out to be bad. And right now, people are on the fence about us. So every contact we make is going to push them one way or the other. I'd rather push them for us.
Great. Well, let me ask you one other question. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just had a quick question on, and this goes back to training, because what you see out there a lot when you see these incidents that start out as a guy breaking windows or a guy stole a candy bar, whatever, and they end up dead. And I think part of the issue is there needs to be more training and de-escalation of a situation, as well as understanding, as you said, Gary. When we were kids, the police came around and, we talked to them, we knew their names. And it wasn't necessarily, they were still the police, so you still had, a certain amount of fear just of authority, but it wasn't like it is now, where you don't even want to have an encounter with a police officer for the fear of ended up dead, right? Which is, over the top. So what do you do about that? What do you do about teaching people how to de-escalate, how to not let a situation get out of control?
Man, that's a great question. I think the bigger issue right now that we have in law enforcement and in our nation in general is just a respect for life issue, in the sense of, someone's, we play, you see it on TV, you see in the TV shows, social media, and on a lot of those things that happen to where no one really has any respect for life. So what we have to get back into law enforcement is teaching time, distance, and cover. Some of these incidents wouldn't even happen if we would just, those officers would have abided by those three things, giving themselves enough space to be able to talk to someone, enough distance in case something happens, they can react correctly, and cover just in case, the situation does become deadly on both ends. We're not doing that anymore. So you're right. As far as de-escalation is concerned, we have to quit being in a rush to do everything. So law enforcement officers right now, especially around the nation, in the bigger cities, live in Augusta, Georgia, and my sister's brother live in Atlanta. So, they live in pretty big cities. And the call volumes for those police departments are so high that we don't get a chance to do community policing, because we're going from call to call to call to call. And we're rushing, and we're not trying to establish those connections of knowing who you are, what your name is. Instead of those officers that used to work the beat and know when Uncle Larry gets drunk that's just how he is. He's really no harm to anybody. We just got to go ahead. Let's call somebody to get him taken home. Instead of, we ended up, Uncle Larry had a pocket knife in his pocket, and now he looked like he was pulling it out when we shot him. Those are the things that we have to get back into. Law enforcement to a situation where I remember when I went to the academy and we were on the range, when we got ready to fire our guns, it was gun. That's what the instructor called out, gun. Now you see a lot of training for law enforcement officers where the firearms instructor calls out threat. And they say, well, the threat could be this, the threat could be that. And I don't agree with that. And I think that's what's caused a lot of the issues, not to mention, which will probably be a whole nother segment we can get into, the police unions and how they protect officer wrongdoings and things like that, and tell officers, don't get yourself hurt. And, you need to be right. You better be carried by, judged by 12 and carried by 6, things like that are in police officers' minds. So we have nationwide, we got a lot of work to do as far as trying to get back to a point to where we have the protection part down pat, being able to protect people. Where we fall short is the service part, and that is getting to know the communities that we serve and being able to fix some of these underlying issues with our officers while they're engaging in these communities.
Well, and that's why you're doing what you're doing, because you have the wherewithal and the insight on how to make that happen and make that positive change that we're all trying to make. Well,
Yes.
Officer Hill, Gary, thank you so much for joining us on the Book of Dad radio show. Your contact information is available on the screen. I'll let Eddy G offer any closing comments he may have, and we'll close the show up.
Well, we
Thank
want
you
to
for
thank you
having
for coming on, Gary. It's been great having you on the show. And, you know, we want to get you back on to see how the Academy is progressing along and, you know, how everything's working out. Because just the initiative of what you're trying to do is a monumental task. And we just applaud you for your positivity and just dreaming about what you want to do, because it's really needed. And we need more guys like you. And this could be a pilot program for the rest of the nation as far as adding those components to police training that could help things work out a lot better for everyone. So we just want to thank you for being on.
Absolutely. And I would say, and also what I would say is that, you know, we need a more educated the force of people who are going out to police, if you will, because we want a more broader based understanding of people in general and policy and everything else. And I think there is no better place than to try and initiate that than at an educational institution. So again, thank you, Gary, for joining us on the Book of Dad radio show. My main man, Eddy G, another great one. But we want to just say thank you for tuning in to us. And I want to close out the show with a quick quote as usual. And I will say this, is that we leave footprints everywhere we go. So be careful where you tread. It's Book of Dad radio show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson. And we'll talk to you next time.